Special session on Thursday, October 17th at 7 p.m.
Anakin,
Here.
Michelle,
Here.
and Chris.
Here. Eric Russell with our 2024 audit.
Wow, that's quick. All right. Everybody should have copies of the audit report. So I'll be brief. First couple of pages is your audit opinion. We have an unmodified opinion, which is what you want. So no reason to modify it. Everything is fairly stated. Your financials, we'll start off with your statement of net position, balance sheet. We got a decent amount of cash on hand, $734,000. Some of that's restricted, some not. And that's for the governmental side, $181,000 for the EWA. Next statement on page 4 is your statement of activities. So that's an income statement that basically covers government-wide. So business type activities, water, sewer, and then the governmental side, general government, streets, etc. So you see those functions listed on the left. And then as you move to the right, you'll see expenses related to those areas. And then charges for services. Under that column, those are revenue type items, so income. As you move to the right and then down to the bottom portion of the statement, you'll see sales and use taxes come in, other taxes. So leads down to your change in net assets. On the governmental side, you had a positive change of $56,446. In the business type activities, a negative $24,710. So in most of that, we're seeing that loss we're seeing in the water department. So can I mention water rates with my, I had somebody like really get after me about water rates one time, but you might want to commission ORWA to take a look at your water rates, your water rate study. That could be part of your issue there. It may just be you need to cut back on expenses to get that to positive. So just a suggestion. I'm not saying raise water rates. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying RWA can take a look at it and let you know if your rates are in line with, you know, what everybody else is. That's really the only thing that's in there. But overall, you've got a positive change in net assets. So that part is looking good. Okay, your next statement is a balance sheet just for the governmental funds. So what this does is it takes out capital assets and just basically looks at cash and short-term liabilities. So, and it also will break it down by general fund. You've got your volunteer fire, and street and alley. So we're breaking it down between the individual governmental funds, whereas the prior statements put them all together. So you can see each fund there and what's on hand. Similarly, on page 6, you'll see revenues and expenditures for general fund, fire, street and alley. And again, we break this down a little different because we're taking out depreciation expense, and we might have things like capital expenditures if you had those. So at the bottom, you'll see the net change in fund balance, and then, yeah, we take out depreciation to get to the number that we saw on page 4 on the statement of activities, 56,000. So on the governmental funds basis, you had a positive change of 101,000. On the government-wide basis, you had a positive change of 56,000. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry this is so dry, but we'll get through it. The next statement is your balance sheet for the proprietary funds. So this is just, you just got the Public Works Authority. If you had more proprietary type funds, we would break those down here too. This is just basically the first information you saw on the first statement. So nothing really else to note there. And once again, here on page 8, you'll see a statement of revenues and expenses. We do break this down a little bit more by, you see the operating expenses are broken down, so you can get a little bit more detail on that statement. Yeah, and a little bit of salaries and wages. Most of it was maintenance and operations, then you see your depreciation, so pretty simple. And then the water, sewer, and sanitation fees should all look the same as what we saw in the statement of activities. I like the cash flow statement a little bit better, which is on page 9, because it gives you an idea of what cash was at the beginning of the year, what it was at the end of the year. And so you see right down for the net increase, decrease in cash was $5,139 for the year. So even though we had a deficit in the PWA for the year, it was, what threw you into the red was the depreciation expense. I mean, you still don't want to be in a deficit, but it's good to qualify that and keep that in mind, that you still had more cash at the end of the year than what you did at the beginning of the year in the public works. The next few pages are just the disclosures. We break down what the restricted cash is. I'm going to turn to page 16. Note 3 breaks down your capital assets. So for governmental assets on the top, you'll see had some equipment additions. We added those to your ending balance. And then depreciation expense. And then I don't think we had anything in the public works. Yeah, we just had those equipment additions in the governmental funds. And you don't have any long-term debt, which I always like to see, because we don't have a $1.2 million water resources board loan. So, and I see those. I don't really have anything else unless you all have any questions, which are welcome, of course.
Can we have a copy of the audit?
I have an extra copy there. It's also filed with the state auditor and inspector, if you want to take a look.
Could I have just a copy?
Sure.
You've got extra?
Yeah. Unless the board wants one.
Thank you.
How long has your firm been doing the audits for Mulhall?
Just in June.
Like how many years?
I
know your dad.
I couldn't say. It's been at least a few years.
Okay. I know as long as I've been on here.
Yeah, I've got a file cabinet drawer full back to, I would say, 80s.
Really?
I don't think it's been that long.
And you don't think it's been that long?
No.
Well, I do have the copies. Well, we can look at the one in this
Well,
office.
and I'm just wondering, I know since I've been in here in the last 5 years that your firm, your dad, I mean, you work with your dad, right? Like,
At least I've been here 8.
yeah, so at least 8.
Yeah.
But when you've audited our books for that long, has there ever been anything that raised a red flag for you guys? That you would, that you would consider?
Well, I mean, he's definitely got more historical knowledge, of course, because this is my first year looking at it. That said, he hasn't mentioned anything to me as anything having raised a red flag. I mean, the only thing you got typically, and I didn't really cover that because it's segregation of duties, and
Right.
that's
It's the same thing
pretty
every year.
common.
Yeah, because of the town, the clerk, treasurer type thing.
Sure.
So, and that's what we,
That's our finding every
yeah,
year.
that's our finding every year. So,
And it's really pretty simple, especially compared to some towns we see where there are a lot of transactions and there's a lot going on and there's sort of money shuffling back and forth and too many bank accounts and places to hide things. I mean, if I wanted to take enough time, I could build your books from the transactions and the bank statements. Whereas with some, it just wouldn't be feasible.
just
Right.
because there's,
Too much activity.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's not just a ton of activity in this compared to some that we look at.
I was just curious, because I feel like we always have, other than the finding, we usually have a good report. And so I just, I was just curious if there was,
New eyes.
yeah.
And you don't have, like I said, big decreases in cash. There's not a lot of long-term debt. It doesn't appear that there's money missing or anything like that. You've got dual signatures on checks. And we went back through and checked, all through the checks, make sure that you all were following that procedure, and you are. So, the only other place that you can really go wrong that I was I recommend if I can think of it, is try to get rid of your cash collections. I know people don't like to hear that, because people still like to pay their utility bills in cash. But if you can get rid of that, it gets rid of one risk area. Now, everything that you have is going through your bank.
Right.
So there's no cash collection for, a clerk treasurer or somebody else who's authorized to either misappropriate or make a mistake or whatever.
And I was actually thinking about that, or I thought about that before, like getting away from, allowing cash transactions and just say checks or money orders. But then, I know banks are a little iffy with money orders sometimes, but at least there's a record. If somebody brings you a money order, they at least have a receipt that, they gave you the cash. So, anyway.
Can I have a question?
Of course.
If a customer pays cash, it's listed on the account, shouldn't it be, that they pay cash? So when an audit's being done, that would show where all the cash has come from?
Well, I mean, yeah, if somebody pays in cash, the risk is that whoever's taking the cash somehow doctors the records so that, well, this person didn't pay. So they might say, no, they didn't pay, or they might reflect that they paid on one record and then shuffle it around and make it look like they did on another. And so
the customer should definitely get a receipt.
yeah, you should keep your receipt always for cash. But even then, I mean, if nobody's bothering you about the bill, then how do you know?
Well, if it comes past due later,
Yeah.
you're gonna know.
Yeah, but if the person in control of the billing system can just simply make that bill go away, there are ways around those kinds of things. That's why it makes it easier if you don't accept cash.
Yeah.
Because now you've got a separate utility billing system. I mean, you're using a credit card. The credit card transaction can't be hidden.
Right.
It goes through the bank.
Right. Okay. I was just curious, kind of where your your opinion as with your experience, just.
Yeah, I mean, and the only other thing again is the water rates. So look at that, because you don't really have that much in expenses going through there.
Right.
So if you have a whole bunch of salaries and wages over there that I could point to, that I could say maybe you could look at that and cut down on expenses, I would say, yeah, definitely take a look at that. But I think you're just maybe running a little bit lean because rates are maybe need to be looked at.
We try to do the increases, but I know that things have just gone up in the last couple of
Well,
years.
we're still on the low side.
Yeah.
She tells me that every year.
Well, we've had since COVID happened, I think, I looked it up the other day, we've had cumulative inflation since 2020 of like 24%. It's wild. So everything else has gone up in cost, and if you're not keeping up, then it makes sense.
I do the stuff for our church, and I've definitely noticed the different things, utility-wise, have increased. So I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah.
And we did have a water increase, didn't we?
Yes.
I mean, she does try to increase it. And I know they try to be nice, because the gas in this town will eat people alive trying to pay their bill.
We increased every July, on water, sewer. And then we increase when the trash goes up, and we have to go up to cover that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's hard, and we've had a lot of inflation in the last few years, so even if you're doing it, had gone up 2-3% over these last 2, 3, 4 years, that wouldn't have been enough to keep up with other
see,
costs.
that's what we've done.
Yeah. Yeah, we've just gone up very little, but we may need to look at an increase again.
I wouldn't expect inflation to be that high over the next few years, but
We
who
hope.
knows?
We hope. Did you have a question, Jack?
Well, one comment about cash. We have some people that don't have checking accounts, that don't have credit cards. So a money order is 30 to 40 miles driving, if they have a bank. Some that just do cash. And so it's kind of difficult when they don't have these other things. And it sounds kind of odd, but there's those cases where they don't, if they get paid, they get the cash. That's it. And so, a money order is 30-mile trip or 32 or 3 this way, 40 miles this way. Depends on where they bank at. So,
Plus, pardon me, Jack, don't you have to pay for money order too now?
Yeah,
Isn't there a fee to get it?
I mean, a lot of towns are going to a debit or a credit card system, but yet they're also charging you an extra $10 to $15 to make your payment. You go try to pay your Logan County property taxes, you use a credit card, it's an additional $15 they charge you. Because they're gonna make their money and they're paying the credit card companies, they're not gonna lose money. And that's where, so somebody will say, well, I'm not gonna do that, I can't, because in this town, I couldn't afford to pay $15 extra for every bill I paid if they wanted $15 for using the credit or debit card, so, and I know most of the people in our town can't do that, so cash is, like Jack said, most people around here deal with cash. In a perfect world, we could come down here and hand Debbie our card and it'd do it, but, I mean, a lot of my bills I pay online, but even, like OG&E charges me $3.50 to make a payment to them.
in a perfect world, we wouldn't have cash.
Yeah. Well, we don't want a cashless world because then the government has full control of everything we do.
So that's maybe a deeper discussion for another time, but anyway, thank you for your time.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. Nice to meet you. Okay, yes, you too.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, Debbie, do we take credit cards for payment?
No,
Okay, I started to say, because you would be charged a fee for
Yeah.
the credit card, and then you would have to
charge.
add that to the customer, or else that's just a good old boy, because they paid their bill.
Oh, okay.
I make a motion to adjourn at 7:18.
I'll second.
Anya
Yes.
and Michelle
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
That was fast.
I can go have something.
We have covered now.
Finish my shoulders.
Yeah.